Because they have me singing from inside the building. Oh, there goes Porkins. Off he went. Why? Why did the document? You know what you did? Oh, they got back to me. Got the third one up.
Hey, well, welcome to the Dream Labs, Dr. Contrast Live. I just thought I'd kind of touch base here again today, and moving into phase 2 of this transporter system, or this carrier program we're dealing with the Manticore, and it's like a dropship system. And I just want to go back and review some things we did yesterday. Before we move on here a little bit, this is the final sketch we did last week on the actual hangar version of the Manticore. And I think the thing I want to really stress in this sketch here, before we move on, is that to try to keep as much as the flavor of the machine as we possibly can, again, by moving into this new dimension of the program we're calling this dropship system. So I think when we look at it, I'd like to be able to hold on to, in the conversation yesterday, for example, we talked about holding on to the actual cockpit study itself, and the wing system, engines, and above and below, and then really they're keeping the dihedrals in place as well. I think a very interesting portion of it. And the real issue was back in this area here when we had this tunnel system and the turret system back there, this firing program. That became an issue when it became part of the process of putting together this transporter or this dropship system. So I think based on that, we went right back into holding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different elements in place, so we can kind of move into a very simple system of getting this dropship program put together. So I'm going to put this aside for a moment and go back and review where we were. Again, I started out yesterday showing you some real quick little sketches on maybe doing some storage modules that were part of the process. Hey, Linear, how are you? I'm working on, so I'm just looking there. Go be tuned in. Looking forward to today. Yeah, looking pretty good. Linear, thank you for joining us here. Just doing a bit of a review before we get into the actual savvies of the whole thing here. So we went back yesterday and went into, again, a little plan view study of what the vehicle might look like with the actual body form, engine systems, and then adding this compound module, the storage system, the dropship piece, and the carrier behind it, and going into some little variations on theme and what they might look like when you go back into that. So that's where we started with that guy. Then we came back in, and phase 2 in yesterday's stream talked about, for example, getting the cockpit area squared away, and then looking at a docking station or docking element area where we can actually put the pieces together, and going to 2 variations. Either we lock into the actual cockpit or the assembly itself, or we go over the top and kind of hug it and then just snap in, or else dock above and below. So that was a little elevation study there put together. Then based on that little concept piece, we moved into this, which is kind of a quick little study overview of what that might look like. And the real difficulty here, obviously you can see right off the bat, when you go to this whole process of going over the top and docking into the actual module itself, and doing a couple little thumbnail sketches here, really looked a little odd in terms of getting the exhaust system run right into the storage system itself. Unless we elevated this, which we tried to do in some other views, like for example into here, but it didn't have the same concept or the same simplicity about it that I felt was really merited here when we moved it into the whole process. So I think that's the reason for going to this system. Notice again, we try to keep as much of the cockpit wing surfaces, the upper and lower engines, and then again, what's missing here are the dihedrals. They'd be part of the process as well. So once we had that squared away, we went to this little thumbnail sketch. I think this is an interesting breakthrough from where we were yesterday, because near the end of it all, we talked about, I think Chip brought it up, and Linear, you as well, if you're still listening here, was getting into a process where we actually use that same system where we disconnect the firing module, the attack module's Dragonfly tail system on this thing, and remove it, then put it into a storage system and call it the actual, they had a name, I think, Chip had a call it the fantail. That was it. Yeah, he had a fantail process looking at this to kind of say that'd be a nice way to kind of simplify the storage system and get this thing moving. And again, at the scale of this thing, there's a little bit of human scale here to show you exactly how large this piece is. And so based on yesterday's stream, at the end of it all, it was kind of interesting to see how we got some resolve on the fact that, yeah, this is the best way to treat this thing. Keep it nice and honest, to keeping all the pieces together and maintaining the majority of the program we've dealt with over the last month or so, and moving into this fantail process. So based on that sketch, went ahead and put together some of these guys and did a little thumbnail study over like an overhead rear view of what that might look like in terms of blocking it in. It was interesting how all of a sudden it just seemed to fall into place. This is not quite the same approach that the fantail we just showed you, but it's the same basic principle by locking in the actual body form itself and holding the wings together, the dihedrals and the upper and lower engine systems. So you got to get that to work. So I thought that was kind of interesting how we put that all those pieces together here. And again, what was the nature of this guy going to be? How long is it going to be? How big is it going to be? What's the overall drag of this thing going to be as far as putting all the pieces together? So that's a little fast little thumbnail sketch to start the process. And then from there, I jumped ahead and moved up the scale a little bit. And just going to bring these in here. We'll show you what we've developed here for the rest of for a little bit of a review here. Went back in and looked at this and expanded the sketch a bit here, and to begin to look at, again, cockpit area, wing system, tucking underneath and fully swept back. And then the red pen represents that engine lower that we had discussion in just a few moments ago, and the other finished illustration and the hangar variation. And again, coming at engine nacelle here and engine nacelle here. So all of a sudden we started to clear this. Notice we slimmed that up a little bit and got that rear section to work a little bit as far as the dropship cargo thing carrier was concerned. So that looked pretty healthy in terms of the right view, maybe to show what's happening back in the area here, but not quite resolved yet about what to do with this whole tail section. Is that really what we want to do? Is it just a caravan of cubicles or boxes that have open stores and doors, open the doors and storage areas in it, or do we want to go ahead and do some variations on them? And again, add in the dihedrals, we kind of stretch these back a little bit more, I think, to get more dynamics in them. So, but that's basically when we started with that process there. Then all of a sudden we went back to that and said, okay, what about this? Now I tuned in a little bit more, give a little bit more definition. I think this started to really kind of tell a story a little bit here. What do you think, Lanier? Is this making sense to you since you're on board here with me? If you're still there, you're back and forth. I don't realize you're working here back and forth, but if you have a moment, can take a look at this guy. What do you think in terms of the overall character? And I'll describe it in a moment here, what we did with this generation. Looking at the possibility, again, of really holding on to the cockpit, upper engines, lower engines, the dihedrals, and then notice the exhaust system kind of clears nicely. It's got some clear path to get that to work here. What I did was a variation on theme here, but the docking devices right in through here, and then we come back in with this series of boxes. This could be storage as well as 1, 2, 3, possibly 4. We could modify this and keep extending the train here. Yeah, I've been wondering the back view for it too. I only saw the front pictures. Hey, Chad Ahoy, good to see you. Nice to have you on board here, Chad. You're a busy day today, so thanks for dropping by. Just going to be a bit of a review here where we were with this whole process. So I'm just trying to get some consensus on the character of this guy from the rear 3/4. I think that's probably the best view to show this thing in terms of modifying it. Overall, again, notice we've got the butterfly system with the dihedrals are in place now. What I've done here is just kind of taken the whole process of pushing this wing surface instead of notice in the other sketch where the wings are all fully swept back, which is kind of stabilizing a little bit, but it kind of destroys the fact that we've got this dihedral overhead. So I moved that wing system out just a bit and pivoted it and got a little bit clearer with the fact that here we are with a little bit of an overview. And what this does, I think, really kind of cleans up the whole process. And I still wanted to keep some of the attack system back here, so we modified the rear cap here with that gunner, ammunition or the artillery system that we had in the original piece. But again, notice it steps in a little bit, gets it more dramatic, and comes back out to some bulk back here, and I think it gives it a nicer presence. It looks like it belongs, and it has a bit of a stately approach to it. Not that we really look at that, but the study is kind of interesting how it just kind of fell into place. I think the biggest dilemma that we faced yesterday in the program was getting this thing to clear past the exhaust system. So that was kind of an interesting look at getting this guy to really run for us here. So cool. But I'm really pleased with the fact that we were able to maintain all the uppers. I didn't want to destroy anything forward of that area. That had to be really kept intact. And I think that was a real challenge, especially after yesterday's go-around, with a lot of the conversation we had during the course of the stream yesterday. And by the way, while I'm at it too, for those of you like Linear and Chip 7 who were involved in this thing yesterday, I really did appreciate the impact that you had on the conversation about the yays and nays and what to do with this thing and how to really treat it. So that was very, very helpful, extremely helpful in putting the final pieces in. Now, the funny thing about this view, let me just add something. Notice how this gets pretty dramatic and opens up, but you lose it on this side because it's such a severe drop and a severe plan view change in the actual wing structure itself. So you don't see much, but you get a better idea where that dihedral is on the upper. And again, back in through here with some of the storage systems, and I think it's starting to really tell a really neat story. So, hey, thanks, Shadow. I'm glad you love it. I'm glad you like this thing. I mean, it's a bit of a challenge, and you and I have worked way too hard to give this thing up without having a good tack plan at it here. And again, simple little things like maybe modifying some of the engine nacelle systems up front to give it a little more relief and open this thing up a little bit more. The reason for doing that, just a touch of a change here, was to open this up to give me a little more clearance back here for the exhaust system to kind of work through when we put this together. So that's where we were with that study. And let me just move on here for a bit. So once we got that established, all right, what does this thing really begin to look like in an elevation? We've got the overhead 3/4 rear, but what happens when you drop it down a little bit, again, to an elevation study about where this thing is going to really go. So let's take a look at these guys. And pardon me, I just tightened down a little bit more and put a little more definition in some of the line work. And same view, but just getting a little bit more of the definition put together based on the last study we just looked at here. So that's basically it. And then once that was established, I thought, let's turn it around here and go some elevations here. So I had just some really quick studies here of just pure elevations down at ground level. And what does it begin to look like when you look at the elevation, for example, switchblade wings? Yeah, that's what it is. Switchblade wings, you got it. That's pretty cool. That's a good title. Oh, that side profile. Yeah, what do you think? Yeah, Shadow, does that work for you all right? I mean, look at the scale of this thing. I think we really have, I think we've done some interesting things here. I mean, we pushed a little bit of the engine systems rearward a bit. Hasn't changed much from the other view. And again, we've kept this whole process. Cockpit intact, upper engines, lower engines, and dihedrals. But really makes a difference. Notice how we really extended the base on this thing. So actually, the actual cab itself, the actual format, this can come in and duck up underneath here and pick up. And this is where the module we kind of plug in. So yeah, I like the top one. Yeah, the top one I think has got the best approach. I think that's a little bit clumsy here. I don't like going up on top at all. That goes back to what we were talking about yesterday, Lydia. So thank you. Well, the little guy knows what he's talking about. Yes, he does. So do you, Shadow. This was the first one I did based on, and this, let me go back to this one just for a moment here. That was based on, and notice how nice and smooth that came through. That was really a good premier piece to work with, and part of the ground rules to keep this thing nice and slick and clean. Its section changes and it drops in a little bit more. There's a bit of a core change in here. It's not all solid, just steps back a bit, then drops into that lower piece. And as what we're talking about, and I think that's what we're trying to show it here. And a little bit of that shadow definition. Here are the boxes, for example, going back into storage. Here's that gunning system back here, that ammunition process. In the rear portion, the dihedrals in place. And also a little bit of the drop section in through here to kind of carry the body form through. And then this is a variation A, and then the B and C. And again, going up on top, a la cargo carrier, vehicle study just did not have the same presence about it. There's just something about maybe this could slim up a little bit and get a little less obtrusive, but at least the idea I think is there that we've got some pretty good stuff going on. So I think it's very unique. So I'm just going to take a moment here and based on that little study, try to put together a couple more little pieces on what that rear section might look like as far as the module is concerned, and see if we can put a little bit of section to as we go here. So let's kind of go back into this thing and just do some detailed studies on what that box system might look like. I come back in through here with this and just get the boxes put in place. Just want to concentrate what that might look like. So let's take this back a little bit and straighten it. Open this up. Get that dome surface back here. Just kind of flare that out. Let's get that back in place. Let's put a bit of crown in this guy too, so we get more of that look and that look. But the idea behind this now is I come off of that center line, it's right down that spike. And keep in mind now, this is a little detail on some of the storage systems that we're working with. So up front here, it carries on the cab surface here. So I just want to take it. Let's get this center line splitter. Let's do this and this. Let's get this started. Let's do this. I'm going to come back through here lightly, box that in just a bit. I'm going to change the variation here. Notice in that one process there, we had this thing kind of stepping out a little bit. So let's step this out and open that up. Let's open that up, a bit more depth to it. There we go. That's kind of cool. Now bring it downhill and open it up just a touch more. And at the same point in through here, open that up. And that comes right back in and picks up that same process. This is where the wing glove would be for the dihedrals. So it does that. That comes into this. Now let's separate this guy. Section, section. gun system. Tail section comes out. That runs in. And at the last moment, let's add a little bit of a stabilizer back here, this dihedral. A little rounder. Break that up. Now let's go back in through here. Let's step this thing off here. We'll go back and do a little section study. So what's happening underneath there is just what comes off the body carrier itself. Actually, the engine's up on top here. And we're just going to put that together in terms of just detailing out what this upper piece is going to look like. Let's go back in here. We're going to get some little detail work in through here. A bit of a cat's eye in this place. Get that to work. Docking devices right here, so it's going to put that envelope in place. That's going to show you where that brow is. There's where it starts to take off in the actual canopy itself. There's actual canopy here, and actual canopy here. So it goes up, breaks over, goes uphill, and begins to break down into the actual hood itself. So that's pretty interesting how that shape's kind of neat. I don't know if we're losing any space here, but what do you think, guys? This kind of an offset here. Let's just kind of take this underneath. Let's offset this just a bit. A little bit of relief. Start adding some detail in this thing. And we're just going to fog in where that exhaust process is so you can see how we're clearing that guy. That exhaust system is going to sit right about in there. Coming up that major engine. So that's a little phantom study here. Then the wing comes over the top of that. So there it is. It's just a little detail piece here to kind of show us where we are. Pardon me as I just rotate this a bit. As we come into this thing, let's go back down to here. Turn this just a bit. Little shadow over the top of this guy as it offsets. Just put it right there. I cut a little section through this thing. So it comes up, crests, drops back in again, goes to the top, gets in this bay door closing. That opens up just a bit right there, comes up underneath, and it curls right underneath and into that section. Another section here, comes in, curls underneath, goes underneath, comes back over the top of this thing. Now again, that's pretty consistent all the way through that form there. What do you think, guys? Is this too, you think it's too cosmetic, or does it do the job, or what do you think? I'm gonna hold on a minute here and see if we can get some input from you guys about what this thing might look like here. Anybody? Any comments out at all? So if you're still tuned in here, let me just do this. Engine nacelle. Let's try to put a little context to that thing. And there we are. Starship Captain Nemo. Is that the tail section? Yes, it is. Nemo, hey, good to have you on board. How are you? In case you missed some things here, we're working off of, let me give you a quick genealogy here. Nemo, we started yesterday with this program. We're trying to go through this whole process of maintaining some of the same elements we dealt with in the original Manticore series, which is here. I started with introducing. Let me give you a real quick review here. What we're trying to do is develop this dropship system in the same process here as the actual hangar version of the Manticore. What I wanted to do yesterday was I really concentrated on starting the stream and looking at exploring this whole tail section by keeping as many elements as we possibly can. I see the upper and lower engines, the cockpit area, the dihedrals, and this became the issue back here. And also another issue was, do we change this? Do we replace this or modulate this? We're going to go into that in a moment here. And the real difficulty by getting some pieces put together was actually the engines themselves were really difficult to deal with in terms of where they located. So that's where we started here. Nemo, just to get me up to speed. Yes, I did some concept sketches on some of these guys, for example. Going back, and what does that look like? Is it pretty complicated? There's a lot of busyness going on in here, looking at some of those storage modules itself. So we started here with just some series of boxes and then some attachment system for docking devices and what they might look like. Moving to some other little studies here about, well, maybe we look at maybe an interlocking system or an overlap in the actual cockpit study itself. So we did to that one yesterday. Then I moved into a little thumbnail sketch. It was really revealing when you start to use this thing and looking at a little bit of an overhead 3/4. It was okay until all of a sudden we flared this out and tried to get that storage system to work. And all of a sudden the engines, the exhaust system made real difficulty. So we kind of looked at that guy and kind of pushed it offside a little bit. I wanted to maintain, again, all those elements as we possibly could in the original piece we were working on. Then we went to this guy and said, well, what if we do to a fan tail? I think when Chip 7 brought up the fact that let's keep that same body form, but just bring that same process and go into storage systems by just removing that whole, hey, Chip, how are you? Good to see you, Chief. I'm just going through a bit review from where we were yesterday. And this sketch is where you came into play here, Chip, in terms of, let's try this fan tail process where you actually use the actual, the Dragonfly tail system and then incorporate it into a storage system for this dropship process. So that's where we were there with that guy. And just where we go, and let me go back and backtrack here some of these beauties too. So let's go back here, bring you and Nemo up to speed here. So based on that conversation we had yesterday, I went ahead and did the following here. I took a look at this guy and said, you know what, based on that, why don't we try this, where this is a little bit of an overhead 3/4 based on that process that Chip we were talking about. Grabs popcorn. Yeah. So we took a look at that same, again, overhead view, engines in place, lower engine in place, exhaust areas. Notice this really kind of streamlines it now because now we've got some real estate for that exhaust to kind of pass through and then become an issue. And then, of course, the underneath is doing the same thing. So the lower engine nacelle is not an issue at all. So all of a sudden we're getting this process to work with us. So I started there with a little thumbnail sketch based on our conversation yesterday, and then moved into, okay, let's refine that a little bit more. Let's go into something now. There's a view that I think might have some real substance. Let me stop here for a moment and review that guy. What do you think, gang? That's an actual piece coming together. Now it looks like a bit like a lobster. Yeah, it's a bit of a, that's interesting. Is that yay or nay, Nemo? Lobster-like, yes or no? I can read Chip Simmons' mind. Those are missiles. Okay, that helps. But again, that's a basic gesture where we are. We're not quite complete yet with this whole idea, but it's the idea of maintaining all of that information up front that we kept. That's all standard. And then coming back in and doing a really nice job of getting some sort of a system back here, still maintaining some sort of a gunnery process back here for protection and the actual module itself. So that's where we are right there with that little pencil sketch, gang. What do you think there, Nemo? Does it pass the acid test for you guys? Shadow, everybody, Linear, who's ever on board here, what do you think? Yay, the carapace segments keep the yeah, that's right. They'll keep the flexibility at quite a bit. We might expand that a little bit more. This is the first pass at it. I'm just going through some process here, but I think the idea behind it all, Nemo, and everybody else involved in this process, really begin. Now, thanks, Chip. I just noticed that this looks. Yeah, I think it's based again. Your input yesterday was really critical. Yours are Linear. It took it away from adding things on like a cargo carrier up on top and then massing it underneath. But this whole idea of getting this fantail process was really interesting from your point of view. This is a variation on that, pardon me, on that theme, where we kept it nice and slim, avoided all the exhaust systems, but yet it had that same profile instead of adding things to it or going above and below. Now we could segment this. Notice this body form comes right through the actual itself. And say this is all upper and lower storage. That could be all one unit. We'll have to look at that and see what it looks like. It's great. But that was mostly Chip yesterday. Yeah, that's Chip. That's pretty cool stuff. So there we are. That was a pencil sketch. Then went back and refined it and just slowed it down a little bit. Went into an ink process. Same overall plan. But notice in this guy, I kept the wings. There was a sketch here where the actual wings were a lot more, yeah, here it is. Pardon me, let me go back to this. Notice in this view, the wings were swept back quite a bit, and it kind of interfered with a lot of complexity on the upper dihedrals. So I went and took the wing system and opened it up a little bit more. And in this view, which I really kind of cleaned it up a little bit and gave it a little bit more presence. This had some really interesting substance to it here. So, and then again, the dihedrals in place, and then these actually can flex and move up and down as well as everything else. And again, what I really am pleased with from yesterday's conversation, with your help, gentlemen, is keeping in mind that this thing was really, all that had to be held. That was really processed. That was very difficult to keep. And not difficult to keep, but an absolute ground rule to work with. Pardon me again here. So there we are there. And then went back and tightened it down a little bit from there. And then once we saw what that's beginning to look like, and notice how this wing disappears too. It's not an optical illusion. That wing comes out and drops rearward in plan view or in the perspective, but it also does the same thing. It just disappears behind this dihedral here. So it's an optical illusion, but it's correct. So there we are with that guy. Then all of a sudden, from there, Linear and the Nemo, pardon me, and we went Chip. We went from that process to okay, what's it look like in elevation? Let's go back and really slow this thing down. I did a couple of real quick and dirty pencil studies here on elevation. So again, notice A, B, and C. This kind of really begins to tell the story here about scale. Look how big this thing is, upper, lower engine, nice stack of boxes, defense system in the back, and so forth, keeping it all nice and clean. So I'll just hold on a moment here and get your input on this, Nemo. It's lean and lean. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, it just tells a story. I think it's so much more what can I put, much more efficient than adding things up on top. Notice how that destroys, you get some character to it, but just keeping it nice and lean. Notice we've kept the body coming right through, and then that's what this next view is going to show you what it's all about. So I think that really has a resolve to it, and it kind of keeps everything in place with the dihedrals, the wings, the engine, and the cockpit, and then adding that module in the back. This again just snaps right in. The actual junction points are right in through it, right behind the canopy area. So that's where that actual docking system is. It even has a roof rack version. Yeah, it could have that. It could be common both ways. You could add on to that if you wish. That might be a possibility too, Chip. But again, there it is. So I was just going back in the start of the day with that same process of doing some little detailed section work on what this actual rear canopy or the rear storage pods would look like here. So let's go back and do a couple little variations here. Is it that? Again, is it this? The other approach we can do is this. We can come back in with this guy, get that breaker in it, and then drop this down. Same process at this end. Drop it down and then break it. Add a little more mass to this thing. And keeping it pretty consistent. Again, lifting this up and going underneath the body itself. And up in this area would be the actual docking process that'd be in there, and the engine nacelle would sit right about, let's put it this way, engine nacelle would sit right about there. Kind of putting a little bit of a phantom in here, so we're kind of clearing where that engine process is. So that's doing that. And I think the rationale behind that spine is going to be very helpful here. Let's see, and they got Doug. Hey Doug, how are you? Said they want to become an astronaut so I can fly. You're running a lot of risk here, Doug. It's good to have you on board, Doug. Thanks very much. You're just going through this whole, getting this concept down for this dropship process. Where a lot of cargo in these guys. And I think the nice thing about this, let's do this. Just a bit of an offset to take some of the weight out of it. Same basic principle, but this one kind of sinks in a little bit, change a little bit of tempo. This is kind of a consistent pass all the way through. I don't know if that's what we want to deal with here, but just going to get this all squared away. And then, of course, back here we'll have these double dihedrals. Now it'll come out of there. Do the same thing on the other side here, so we don't see very little of that, but that's what that's going to do. There it is, a connection. There it is. We're just going to break this up a little bit more. Now the rationale behind this, again, obviously, is we can go both ways here. In the upper process, we could do this. Bay door opens, spins in from here, hinges from there to there, and then down below, then it gives us some depth. Storage bay there. And again, storage bay there. It's a little bit of tone in this thing. Hope it doesn't confuse too many things here, guys. Show where the hinge pattern is and what it does. center of rotation, and again, center of rotation. Really critical stuff. This is where, let me stop there for a moment. This is where perspective, yeah, Caterpillar, right, that's a good point there. Nemo, this is where, as far as I'm concerned, where it really is a valuable tool to understand how perspective. Now, I don't understand all of it, but I just want to really point out that the reason this works so well is because of the perspective dynamic of how it happens with these actual pieces in motion. It gives you a lot of perspective on how this thing begins to really function. So having knowledge of how that perspective operates is extremely critical, really critical. So it shows us, for example, there it is in closed variation. It's a little bit of a different variation in theme here. It's not quite as much offset, and it takes the form right through as opposed to ending it short. But again, it gives us that same stout look at, and let's just put a little bit of section in this guy too. Into the undercarriage. And again, this is where that brow would start. That's where the cockpit area would start. So what do you think there, guys? Let me stop there for a second. What do you think? Nemo, Doug, any commentary here? We've even had a name yesterday, either Fat Tail or Fantail. Yeah, hey, I think you're absolutely correct there, Chip. I think the name we kind of really put together was the fact that it's a fantail process. It's really interesting, and think that was your input there. Really, very, extremely helpful. Let me just kind of organize this, guys. Get this down just a bit. That fantail process was really cool. I thought it made a lot of sense. So those are two little studies on getting that thing, how to rotate it, what the storage system is going to look like as far as the process is concerned. And just for what it's worth, let's see what happens here when we just do this. By the way, Doug, if you're still there, just a really quick commentary. What do you think of the process there thus far? Are you buying this overview here? Just for a moment, let me get this this line study. This is what we're working on. Is to put these guys together as best we can. Just getting a variation on theme by putting these pieces together. The overall holding on the major components, and getting a nice little fantail process back here to kind of make this dropship system come to life here. So what do you think, Doug? You're the last man on board here. What do you think, Chief? Coming together? Coming all right? While you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and just start a little study here. Now I'm just going to isolate here why and how this thing begins to function. That would connect right in through here. That comes off of that stem. The grab point's right about there. I'm going to come back in and just say this comes right back in and follows through with in this portion. Let me do this just for what it's worth here. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. What do you think? Doug, you still there? Linear, you guys have any thoughts here about where we are? I'm just doing a little thumbnail study here. This now becomes the overlap. This is where the box system comes into play here, etc. I'm going to abbreviate that just to get it on the page here. But this is what we're looking at. There's the actual graft here. This thing just comes in, snaps down, docks into that area there, and I think we're on our way. That kind of cleans it up a little bit here. So we're going to get these guys put together. Lower engine. Wing graft. Drawing right through this guy. It comes right back in and does a connection for us right about in there. And then this kind of slides through. And it carries on from there. Oops, pardon me. Put a human scale. There we are. The elevation would kind of show us where that begins to dock in here, and there we are. Snaps into the top of the main body. Yeah, it does. I think that makes sense, coming up on top and just kind of snaps in on top of the main body, and the rest of the actually entry egress area here under normal conditions is right in this area here, Chip. But we're actually going to overlap that just a bit, try to get just enough of that shoulder in there to get that docking device to kind of slide in and get that job done here. Question mark. Yeah, go ahead. Question? Sorry, Chip. Just noticed you had a question there. What do you think? This making sense here, gentlemen? So far, so good? Oh, okay, very good. Yeah, I think there's some. I mean, I just need to get a consensus from you all who are tuned in here. What do you think about? Is this the right approach? Are we too organic with it? Should we have a little more shape to it? Should we add? The difficulty is, and remember that engine nacelle is always going to be a bit of a bugaboo. It's hitting right out there, so we need to clear that. And also, do we need? Can it go? For example, can we go into something like this? Just very quickly. I just don't. Let's hold on to that for a second here. Come back to that one in a moment. Do we want to go back in and look at something like this? center line split. Now, instead of being so straightforward with this guy, let me just get this started here. Just have to confuse the issue here. Let's call that for now, that just for what it's worth, the basic docking collar right there. That's where we're going to actually attach this guy. My question is going to be this. Oh no, sorry, I don't have a question. I was adding a question mark to my previous statement. Oh, okay. Snaps. Yes, it is. That's what it's going to do. Let's kind of add just some mystery here. The ammunition system that rotates back here. My center line comes through. Now, what we've shown in the previous go-around studies for this dropship cargo containing system is very vertical, straight wall. Do we want to put a little bit of romance in these guys and say, okay, maybe it's more of this? Let me get a section started here. Is it more of that? Which now it gives us a little bit more of a different look to it here. It's going to get that part, let's get that angle squared away. Let's get that angle squared away. Let's follow that right there. And then we minimize the back side of this guy by just doing this. We keep it pretty straightforward and do the following here. Bevel, break, break, break. Let's kind of get this guy started here. Break. We put a variation on theme here, for example, that to that to that, into that docking station itself. And then just for reference again, remember that nacelle is going to sit right about in here. Take a peek look at it here. There's the nacelle and location to where the carrier is going to be. Now it might be a little bit big on the large side here, but nonetheless, just want to kind of spot that and to let us know we're still clearing that whole area in the plan view there, kind of run it through. Anodyne, hey, how are you? Good to see you, Anodyne. Thanks, Anyon. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly here. Good to have you on board. I'm doing really well. Thank you for joining us here. We're just going through a Manticore process where we're actually adding a little bit more detail work to a transporter or a dropship process to this whole idea. Looking at just variations on theme here, I'm just coming back in with some variations on theme. That's what we're looking at as far as the storage systems go. Looking at this, for example, in the elevation, once the program was put together, some just real quick variations on theme. Then we started with this process right here, going back in and adding a little bit more of a three-quarter, trying to keep as much of the forward process of the dihedrals and engine systems above and below and the actual cockpit area intact here. So I'm just kind of going through some real fast, very quick and dirty thumbnail sketches here on what these variations might look like and detailing some things. A little elevation study with the actual cargo piece or the dropship cargo materials. A little bit of motion study for what the containers might look like when we open them up a little bit here. And coming back into here, that's that going to go. And I'm just doing a couple of variations on theme here just to kind of get it started here. Let's just do this. Again, cutting back underneath, a little more bevel to it. Changes the character just enough. That's kind of nice too. Upper and lower bays. Nacelle treatment where the engines might fall. Let's take this over the top just a bit. And back downhill again. And again. So that represents a little bit more of a bevel change, or a little bit more character on the body side itself. I don't know. What do you think, gentlemen? I mean, you guys are looking at the audience. Feel free to give me some offer some conversation here about, or description about what likes and dislikes you might want to look at here. Let's put a bit of shadow in this thing as it drops up underneath. That's where the surface change is going to be. Offset, offset, and maybe some designation here and what bays we're in. Pardon me as I tone it just a bit. Trying to really analyze what this thing might look like from the point of view of just getting enough shape in it. Now let's just do this. Center line, crown, bevel, brake line, up underneath. That would be the actual shape of the module right there. And of course, with all the other stuff going on, we've got those dihedrals that come off of that, which will give us that kind of a presence in essence. And behind that, we've got this location as well, just to kind of put this into place. Engine nacelle. And when it's all said and done, point of rotation here, let's do this. For bay door opening, come back into this guy. That just pivots out. So it walks around that center line right there. A, B, and now C. A little off scale here, but nonetheless. That's rotation. So when they open up, That's what we've got as far as that whole thing goes. There she is. So what do you think, gang? I'm going to stop right there for a moment, just get your inventory on this. What do you think of so far? Shape of the boxes are limited by the profile of the exhaust. Yeah, I think they really are. I mean, that's a critical portion right there, Chip. There's no doubt about that. We've got to really watch what that does. Now, what I haven't looked at here, and I don't know if it's worth the time, get your input on this thing. There's a possibility, too, of coming in with a screen, for example. Let's just go back to the sketch here for a moment here. Just keeps getting better and better. Yeah, it's interesting how this whole thing's starting to evolve. We could go this route, too. Come up very narrow here and then come up over the top of this nacelle and right above it. But that's going to get pretty slim. And I think the heat generated underneath that would be an absolute mistake. So I think, and Dion, how's it going? What do you think? So far, so good? Just making sense for you? Let me move this over just a bit here. A little section study here. Let me just tighten this down just a bit. I mean, I realize these shapes are very simplistic for the time being, but I don't think we need to get a lot of complication back here as far as what this guy is doing. I mean, it just seems to be so much more just very interesting, totally makes sense. Hey, thanks very much, and Dion, really good to have you on board. It's been a long time no see, so thanks for taking the time to join us here. I really think in closing, not in closing, but in conclusion, I think the thing that really makes it to me, makes it significant for me at any rate, that these shapes, let's go back to this for a moment, pardon me for jumping back and forth. This shape, everything we've got going, for example, up here, really making sense in terms of there's a lot of busy stuff going on up front. Cockpit, engine nacelles, upper and lower engines, dihedrals, the dragonfly principle above and below. Let's go back to the original sketch here. This is what we're trying to maintain, and everybody else looking here. That's the one we started with. I want to make sure we keep as much of this flavor as we possibly can. Again, engine upper, lower, cockpit. The wing surfaces, the dihedrals that give us that flexibility at speed and so forth. That's what. But the real issue was back here. What do? We go from that attack vehicle to a dropship system. And I think basically holding on to all those parts. Let's go back to this sketch here. Basically holding on to all those pieces right up front really make a huge difference. And then coming off of that with a nice simple extended piece with the dropship process makes a lot of sense. And I think I'm just going through, again, sorry for the conversation back and forth here, just going through some of these processes in terms of what are those boxes. I'm going to keep it real simple. It doesn't need a lot more. It doesn't need a lot of jewelry now. It needs to be really refined. Have you seen the latest concept ship from SIG? They made the tail turret hideaway. Oh, that's neat. We have to call Deb on that perhaps. And yeah, Deb's yeah, all our ideas are being stolen here. Good grief. Jeez, I didn't know that. I thought we came up with a neat idea, so they hide it. Well, we'll do the same thing. We'll hide ours too. We'll do it a little bit more cheekily. Let's put it that way. So there we are, gang. And again, simple, the better. I think there's something about the process here, getting this guy put together. Not a lot of or cosmetic pieces to work with there. Again, dihedral, engine nacelle, poorly drawn here as far as scale goes, but I just want to give us a location of where we are looking rear view from back here, looking back toward the actual cockpit itself. So there we are. In essence, ground would be here, in essence. And again, just to kind of give it a bit of a sense of scale, we're actually looking at something like this. From that view, that's what we're looking at as far as size is concerned. That's a massive piece of equipment. So again, all the more reason to keep, whether that shape goes, whether it's beveled or straightforward or kicked out or cantilevered, like we're showing here. I think there's a lot of merit, again, to keeping it very, very fluid, extremely streamlined, and really part of the whole Manticore formula. Big girl, but has big engines. Yeah, it's a massive piece of equipment, the Shadow. We wanted that from the very beginning, so I think we got to that dream here. So I think I'm going to stop right there for the moment. And anybody in commentary, wrapping up here about the surprise? I'm sorry for the loose sketches here. I apologize for the real rapid approach of the studies that we're looking at here, but I just really, let me do this. Let's get these back in order where we started here. There was an elevation. There was a perspective study we worked with, and this is how it all started. Thanks to Chip and the guys yesterday, after the conversation we had about the whole process, it all started with this look. In essence, let me get these guys in order here. We're going to get on the line. There we are. So, in essence, we started with he brought up a good point about getting this fantail process, and this is the sketch we worked on yesterday, Chip. I sure remember this one. That one we looked at yesterday, that was the idea right here in terms of, all right, let's keep it all nice and simple. Yeah, that's great. Hey, thanks very much, Shadow. I appreciate that. Very nice. Surprised it doesn't have 1,000 missiles on it. Maybe it will. We get Chip in here and start doing some cosmetic design stuff on this thing, putting a little bit of a rainbow bit on it. That'd be kind of cool. A little rainbow of missiles. So that's where Chip gave me some direction yesterday, and Linear. It was great to have you on board, Chip. It was terrific. I think the insight, I was struggling with how to piece this thing together. Then you hit this whole idea of the fantail. So from that sketch, yesterday I went to this one. Real rough study overhead, a little bit complicated in the wing surface. So I took the wing surface and moved it out a little bit, which it does in reality. So we have a little bit of flexibility there. So that pen sketch started from that first sketch that we did yesterday, and we went to this guy to try to, and there's just, I don't know, I hope I can say this, and don't misunderstand the context. There's something elegant about that whole lineup there. It looks functional. It looks like it means business. I hope I'm not being out of order here. What do you think those container holes there are just missiles? That's right. Little green guys with missiles. That's a good point, Chip. But I'm sorry for saying this again. I apologize for commenting on the piece of work. But it looks like it's intended to do what it's supposed to do. And I think, again, that's good conversation with the guys on board here yesterday, going back and forth with conversation, likes and dislikes. That's what makes it work. You see, I can sit there and crank on this stuff like you would not believe. I can draw, but it doesn't make any sense until we get good input from the people who are watching this stuff. You guys are vital in this whole process. Everybody from Shadow on down, all the way through, you're all really valuable inputs in putting pieces together here for the actual process of just getting really interesting in terms of making sure we're doing the right thing at the right stage of the game here. So went to that sketch, and we refined it, a little bit more line work on it, just kind of keeping intact. And then from that, I thought, well, we're pretty well locked. We've got the good clearance now to engine systems. That is not connected, by the way. That just kind of happens to fall in line with that grafting device, or the docking device that's up on top there. So we went to that. Then we did some elevation studies, real loose kind of. And I think the favorite was this guy up on top. Is that correct? Because it kept it nice and fluid, kept it nice and clean. Nothing on top of a cargo car carrier, and same thing down below here. I think that was the one we knew was going to be the winner. So that kind of gives it a presence of terms of scale, how big this machine really is. Human scale, 40 meters in length. And then again, notice that the underbelly comes right through and gives us that whole module change. It starts about right here, a little bit further forward rather, and goes and docks in. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 or 6 boxes of storage areas there. Yep, the Fluido is it? Yeah, I think the one on top is really good too. I think, Nemo. By the way, Nemo, now that you're there, back again, what do you think overall? I mean, you giving the thumbs up on this whole process? I hope. Because your input is vital, just like Chip's is, and Linear's, and Adion, everybody. Fluid one, my space was off. Oh, okay. This fluid one here? Yeah, I think that's the one you're referring to. But are you on board with the overall process here, Nemo? Big help. Yeah, very good. That really helps. It made my day. You guys have just made my day. That really helps here. So there we are with this one. Then we turn corners, and then just a couple of just little exercises on from the rear 3/4. Maybe this has to go a little longer. We'll see what happens in the detail work here at all. Some real thumbnail studies on what the box systems might look like. Upper and lower piece. Again, another variation on theme. Being less, maybe more units, and how they hinge and how they open. And putting it in position down here in elevation, that kind of helps a little bit. There we are, but that red graft is where it all starts. And there's the connection point here, and then we take off on that with the actual dropship piece itself. Really like that stowaway cabin. Yeah, that's neat. That's really interesting. So we stow away with that. This can all change. We can get longer with it. We can kind of slim it up a little bit. But I think the thing that we challenged ourselves with yesterday was getting clear of that engine nacelle, the exhaust pattern. I think we're in good shape. Even here, looks like we're close, but we need to take that tangent line and notice we're just on the cusp of clearing that. So that might have a much steeper angle to get that to work. But we'll resolve that as we go. And then last but not least, another variation on theme. Do we want to be more vertical? Do we want to go more, this might be more insect-like or more Manticore-like, where it's got a little bit of that kind of lean to it. So we can't go too far, but that may be part of it as well. So that's where we are today, gang. And again, I can't thank all of you enough for really tuning in here. More angular is better. Yeah, I think so too. I think you're right, Nemo. I think this is much more, even though this sketch kind of gives us some character reference about what we're looking at. I'm going to do some really work, work on this guy to kind of take this whole process and add a little bit more bevel to this, a little bit more shape to it, kind of bring in the same process we've got in some of the wing system here. So I'm going to take care of that as we go here. Cross section, the tail should be hexagonal. Oh yeah, that'd be cool. That would be really cool. Hexagonal cross section, and interesting. I can look at that too and make a note to that. That's neat. So you're saying that last go around, we can actually do this? Now that's great, because that can now give us an upper and lower cavity. There's a brake line, and a brake line, and a brake line, and a brake line. The reason I'm putting that in there, Nemo, is because as we gather this further, that's my pivot point, so to speak, right there. Now this whole thing can just kind of swing over. And do that and drop right down. Or we could go the other way, pivot from here and bring it up on the, that's great. I think that hexagonal section could really be cool. Yeah, I think that's a neat. Thank you very much, Nemo. That's a terrific input there. The hexagonal piece is what we're going to go with. I'll give that a shot. Hope everybody else agrees. There we are by committee. I think we're in. That gives us upper and lower section as well without destroying. It's a lot cleaner than this. That's a little bit forced. This is much more functional. So really great, gang. Excellent. Allows for a lot of flexibility as well for the modules. Yeah, that's a good point too, Shadow. So there's a lot of ground to cover here. Now my last question to each one of you that are on board here today. Do we want to do a rendering of this thing to add to the mix, or do we just kind of let it go as a study? I'm fine either way. I had a Shadow conversation with the Shadow man just for when he came in the office today about the possibilities of what we might do with this thing. I don't want to busify the whole thing up. We've already got two down in the closet, so to speak. We've got this one. We have that one all set to go in the portfolio. That's the attack variation. Then we have this guy and the hanger variation. Correct the spelling in the title. It's Manticore. Yeah, no H. Well, you know what? I looked it up, Shadow, and there's the two variations. You can either go C-O-R-E or C-H-O-R-E. So I'll correct it, and we'll go from there. So there and there. So those are the two variations we've got here. So it's no problem, not a problem at all. A core, it's been a core. We can go either way, and I think if it simplifies the process, we can kind of change the title piece to that and get it taken care of. Looking good, Nemo. I really appreciate it. So again, what do you think, guys? Should we do an illustration of this, or just let it go as a study? Might be kind of nice. This is all these things we're going to add to the portfolio, by the way, too. What do you think, Shadow? Add this stuff to the portfolio so it's part of the storyboard on the two variations. Or actually, I have two variations. One is the attack version, and the second one is getting into a process of going into the dropship variation for the portfolio. So, what do you think, guys? Overall, you're happy with the content here so far? So good, making progress. Your yays and nays are going to make a difference here. We'll make the portfolios possibly to buy if anyone really wants one. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Actually, we can do the same thing with really lovely renders with the hanger. Love it. Well, thank you very much, Nemo. That means a lot. Really interesting. So that's the rendering of the actual hanger variation here in the attack version. All of these, I think correct me if I'm wrong here too, Shadow. We're going to put this stuff out here for sale in print form, 11x17. Once we get it all organized here, we're done. We just have to get them printed in a bookstore or a store of some sort to get it done. So that'll be part of the process. So thanks very much, Nemo. It's very kind of you to make that comment. That really means a lot to me. And then last but not least here, guys, I just really I thank you so much for the progress over the last 2 days. And I'm going to be very transparent here. Coming into this week on yesterday, I wasn't quite sure when we start working on the model. Yeah, that we get a hold of our guy down to the Carolinas and get this thing moving. That could be really cool. But going back to that subject matter I just mentioned a moment ago here, really coming into yesterday's stream, I was a little bit concerned about the fact that, boy, this is going to be a real task because we've got some good hardware to work with here in terms of what the body form was doing, cockpit wings engines and so forth. But a real struggle in terms of how do you get this drop ship thing to work. So I started just scrambling all over the place, and then all of a sudden tuning it in and having good input from Chip and Linear about getting the fantail process down. So all that to say that to all of you, I can't thank you enough for the input. It's extremely helpful. I've always been a great believer in communication. I'm not a one-man show, never have been, do not want to be. This is part of your program as well, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be there as a result of it all. So thanks so much for the time spent, and today to look at this process. We're going to carry on tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow I'm going to start doing some refinement drawings on what the overall process is going to look like with the hexagonal body systems behind it all. Let's see, this has been an amazing ride, and we're grateful for all of you being, yeah, it really has, we're grateful for all of you being a part of it. It started, 5 weeks ago, was it, Shadow? In the basement studio of your drop dead awesome studio area. I'm still mystified by the number of screens you had. I think the last count was about 64. But boy, everywhere was just a really interesting piece. So getting all that put together way before that. Oh, that's right, it did start way before that. Some of the input coming in part of the start on the live show. So all that hard work is starting to pay off. I think we've got a real family in, and I'm going to have to write the guys up at Star Citizen to get our gun turret back. That's kind of a neat, sneaky way to get to steal our ideas. Nonetheless, guys, again, thanks for your time. We'll stay tuned tomorrow. Come in tomorrow at 2:30, go live, and we'll start doing some refinement sketches on this dropship variation, and go from there. So again, thank you so much for the time spent, guys. I always, if you have a moment, please visit my website at drcontrast.com for some drawing information. And lo and behold, I hate to make this announcement. I just like making this announcement, but I'm just really feel negligent about it. And I want you to know that we have had an awful lot of feedback on. I've got books on drawing. I've got prints for sale on my bookstore. We just can't seem to get the thing activated. And the guy I'm working with hasn't had the time to post it all. So that stuff is still coming. We're trying to figure out what to do with this stuff. Because I've got a billion automotive space vehicle stuff, interesting vehicle design, you name it, up on the web store, and the drawing book. I'm adding another one to it called Genesis on like illustration pieces. So I want to get this thing up and running so we can start to get some activity on the bookstore itself. It's about a garage. So that's about it. It's unreal how many trees I've wasted. It's overwhelming. So nonetheless, gang, we're still working on that. So stay tuned with us. And last but not least, I always please visit my website at drcontrast.com and look at some basic drawing lessons. Please pass the word along to those of you who have friends in the area and let them know that I'm available for teaching systems. And then last but not least, again, please, I always really appeal to this, and I'm really looking forward to hoping to get more input from you. Feel free to drop me a note at jim@drcontrast.com. If you have any ideas about what you'd like to see, what you'd like me to work with, lessons, etc., feel free to drop me a note at, again, jim@drcontrast.com. And then last but not least, I always end my streams with this commentary because it's so true, and it comes from the bottom of my heart with respect to each one of you. Never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you certainly are. Thanks very much, gang. See you tomorrow at 2:30. All the best. Dare to be great.